It was a busy Thursday morning at the regional airport, and Terminal 4 was buzzing with the usual hum of travelers dragging their rolling suitcases, announcements echoing from the PA system, and the occasional toddler throwing a minor tantrum. Flight 732 to New York was scheduled to board at 10:15 a.m., and the line at Gate 14 had begun forming almost half an hour early. Among the passengers was a woman in her late 30s, neatly dressed in a tailored navy blue suit, carrying a sleek leather tote. She had sharp features, her hair tied in a perfect low bun, and a pair of silver-rimmed glasses that lent her an air of quiet authority. Despite her calm demeanor, there was a subtle tension in her stride, a mix of impatience and purpose. As she approached the boarding counter, she placed her ticket and ID on the counter and smiled politely at the staff. "Good morning," she said. The gate attendant, a young man barely out of college, glanced at her ticket, then back at her, suppressing a laugh. Ma'am, I think there's been a mistake. This ticket says you're in first class, but it also says it was issued under a corporate travel package, from a startup company." The woman's smile faltered slightly. "Yes, that's correct. Is there a problem?" The young attendant exchanged a glance with his colleague, a woman in her mid-20s with dyed red hair and a nose ring. Both of them giggled quietly. "Well," the young man said, leaning in with a slightly condescending tone, "it's just unusual. This ticket looks like it's meant for, I don't know, a CEO or someone very important. But you don't exactly look like one." The woman's eyes narrowed slightly, but she maintained her composure. "I assure you, the ticket is valid. Could you please check it?" The colleague snorted softly. "Yeah, right. I bet she's, I don't know, an assistant or someone's PA trying to fly first class on corporate expense." A small crowd had started to gather behind them, curious about the exchange. Passengers were shifting uncomfortably, sensing the subtle tension between the gate staff and the woman. Some raised eyebrows, while others tried not to stare. The woman reached calmly into her tote, pulled out a slim leather badge holder, and flipped it open. She handed it to the young attendant. "This," she said softly, "is my identification. I'm the CEO of Titanic Solutions. I also approve this corporate travel package personally." The laughter stopped immediately. The young man froze, his hand hovering awkwardly above the keyboard. The red-haired colleague's mouth fell open. Passengers behind them murmured in astonishment. The young man stammered. I didn't realize." The woman gave him a tight, polite smile. "Please process my boarding pass." He nodded mutely, fumbling to scan the ticket. The system beeped and printed her boarding pass. He handed it over without a word, avoiding eye contact. As she walked down the jetway, the murmurs followed her. "Did you see that? She's the CEO," one passenger whispered to another. "I thought she was just normal looking." The woman found her seat in first class and settled in. She exhaled quietly and reached for her tablet. She had an important investor meeting in New York that afternoon, and the last thing she wanted was unnecessary drama at the airport. But she couldn't help smirking as she glanced at the young gate staff who were still watching her through the glass partitions, clearly embarrassed. Meanwhile, back at the boarding gate, the two staff members were trying to explain the incident to their supervisor. She laughed at her ticket, the red-haired attendant admitted reluctantly. "I thought it was, I don't know, a mistake. She didn't seem like a CEO at all." Their supervisor, a seasoned employee with gray streaks in her hair, shook her head. "People always underestimate CEOs. They assume someone important has to look flashy, with designer clothes or ostentatious jewelry. But that's rarely the case. A real CEO carries herself with quiet confidence, not showy gestures. Today you learned that lesson the hard way." Back on the plane, the woman had reclined her seat slightly and closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about how often she had been underestimated in her career because of her appearance. Time and again, people had assumed that she was in a junior position or didn't have the authority to make big decisions, but she had always let results speak for themselves. Titanic Solutions had grown from a small startup in a cramped office to a multinational company with over 5,000 employees. She had negotiated million-dollar deals, managed crises that could have bankrupted smaller companies, and built a team that trusted her leadership implicitly. She didn't need flashy clothes or a loud personality to prove herself. Her work did that for her. As the plane taxied onto the runway, the woman's thoughts shifted to her upcoming meeting. She was scheduled to pitch Titanic's latest technology to a group of high-profile investors. Success depended on preparation, not on anyone's perception at the airport. Still, she couldn't help but think about the young gate attendant and how easily people make snap judgments. The flight took off smoothly, and soon the bustling airport became a distant memory. The woman focused on her notes, reviewing the figures and strategies she planned to present. About halfway through the flight, she glanced out the window at the clouds stretching endlessly below. She reflected on the day's small encounter. It was a reminder that appearances can be deceiving, that people often judge others too quickly, and that respect is earned through actions, not looks. When the flight landed in New York, she stepped off the plane, confident and composed. A driver was waiting to take her to the investor meeting, and she had barely time to think about her breakfast before her schedule filled up with calls, presentations, and negotiations. Meanwhile, back at the airport in her hometown, the young gate attendant and his colleague were still replaying the moment in their minds. The laughter and mockery they had shared just minutes before felt embarrassing in retrospect. They realized that sometimes, the most unassuming people carry the greatest authority and influence. From that day forward, both of them approached their work with a newfound respect for every passenger, no matter how ordinary they seemed. They also learned a lesson in humility and professionalism. Never judge a book by its cover. As for the woman, the airport incident became just another small anecdote in her life. She didn't dwell on it, didn't hold grudges, and didn't seek attention. For her, success wasn't about proving others wrong. It was about quietly achieving her goals, one decisive step at a time. That evening, after a successful meeting, she sent a short email to her team at Titanic Solutions. Remember, appearances can be misleading. Let your work speak louder than your looks. Confidence, preparation, and perseverance always outshine assumptions. The young gate attendants never forgot that day, and in the years that followed, whenever someone tried to mock or dismiss a passenger, they remembered the woman who had walked through Gate 14, ticket in hand, and changed their perspective forever. And in that small, seemingly trivial moment at a busy airport, a lesson about humility, judgment, and quiet authority had been permanently etched, not just for the staff, but for everyone who witnessed it, if only in passing.